Great. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Today is our SD-WAN 101 webinar, and we have Rob McBride joining us to present. He has over 15 years of experience with us as a software solutions expert, and I'll just let him take it from there.
Thanks very much. Good day, everybody, wherever you're at in the world. Over here in San Jose, it's actually quite a beautiful day, thankfully. I'm going to try and keep this as much as I can brief and short. Our agenda today is really just to kind of give you a little bit of a teaser into what software-defined WAN is, some of the basic components, and just some of the general benefits and things to kind of take into consideration as you look at this as a potential path to some sort of transformative change that you want to do. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So to kind of kick it off, I think that most here who are listening in or will listen in, that we understand there's a lot of things happening from a trend aspect, of course, that are affecting us within the networking world. I picked three here to kind of discuss and just kind of try to characterize how it impacts us within the industry. Obviously with cloud, what we see is, there's a strategy being put in place by a number of you within the enterprise as far as trying to understand, how do you take advantage of a software as a service, strategy or application, for example, like Office 365. And, in talking to some customers, we come to understand that while you may deploy, say Office 365, it becomes apparent to you that there is a significant performance impact at your various different remote locations and branches. That makes you kind of consider, how do I re-architect my WAN as an example? It brings a number of new performance considerations and bandwidth considerations at the branch. From a mobile perspective, I think this one's fairly obvious, of course. There's a lot of mobile devices, and utilities that we use there, but when we look at certain industries like retail, again, talk to a couple of customers, there's an impact on the network from a security perspective, but also a user experience angle. How do we provide positive, let's say in-store experiences to people, but also being able to secure our own store and our own kind of intellectual property. In addition to that, obviously social, from a social perspective. If you're like me, I spend a lot of time on either Twitter or Facebook. And, during times of crises, there's an impact in the network where people want to communicate and socialize what's going on. But when we're looking at it from a business angle, that could actually impact performance for some mission-critical stuff. Again, a quick story from a customer in the recent hurricane. From being a food distributor, their main goal after the lights kind of came back on was to ensure that they were having some continuity of operations. What they wanted to do was they needed to suppress people utilizing social media to try to communicate with either friends and family, but architecting it in such a way that they still can communicate but prioritize their traffic to their main data centers to address their shipping concerns and things. In general, in review, of course, these three things impact the network both from a performance perspective as well as a security angle. So when we look at it, we look at the wide area network, and we've been doing things in the wide area network for years. There's a saying that sometimes, that the current WAN of today is unable to kind of meet some of the needs of what we're doing tomorrow, and that really kind of talks to some of those trends of either cloud or mobile devices, social, even sometimes on a big data analytics kind of perspective. And to summarize kind of what some of those challenges are, we're looking at some levels of complexity as a social challenges perspective to kind of just do a quick recap and review here. The trends, of course, have been impacting us, and the WAN now becomes challenged either from a bandwidth angle as a result of a combination of cost to low bandwidth circuits that we can actually procure today. Sorry about that. Limited application awareness as far as being able to see what your users and the type of traffic flow that's going, and a variety and the levels of fragmentation that's recorded associated to your security policies and things. But in general, all these together provide a level of challenges to the WAN today that's impacting you and you trying to assess how you want to move for tomorrow and looking at trying to address those trends or your own kind of business strategies.
So when we look at it, there is a number of different answers to kind of those problems, and one of them that we're going to talk about today is software-defined WAN or SD-WAN. When we took a lot of quote from Gartner from a report that they published in December of 2015, they make a prediction that roughly about 30% of enterprises will have deployed SD-WAN technology in their branches, which is obviously up from 1% today, considering it's net new. But there's a reason why they seem to be predicting quite frankly, a very large explosion of adoption as it relates to this particular technology. What SD-WAN wants to provide for us is it gives you the ability to increase your bandwidth as a result of easily integrating different types of circuitry or different types of circuits in your WAN to help reduce your circuit costs, but also improve your bandwidth at those particular locations, giving you the ability to deploy more of a hybrid WAN type of a strategy. And associated to, there's some other embedded elements associated to what any one SD-WAN vendor might provide to you as far as their technology and solution is concerned, and that really pertains to application awareness, as well as simplification to how you manage your operations, as well as you control your WAN infrastructure and assets. So when we look at just the basics of what SD-WAN is, what SD-WAN really is really about taking software-defined networking, right, to re-architect the WAN to optimize and control traffic between locations. At its most basic, that is what SD-WAN kind of is. So when we look at the how, well, the how is really utilizing controllers or control infrastructure to create encrypted overlays on top of an existing WAN transport infrastructure. This can be accomplished by either replacing existing CPE devices or augmenting or putting them in play with existing CPE devices. At a higher level, when we look at SD-WAN, there's kind of four arguably categories or functions or features, if you will, that you attain from it or that it provides you. There's a level at the top of analytics, monitoring, and application or operations, an ability to derive and direct application-based policies for the WAN infrastructure, having a very robust forwarding infrastructure that's distributed, and of course being able to attach to a very transport-independent fabric. So, you know, obviously you see the words here, you know, it's kind of great, but let's kind of get a little bit more deeply into this. So what I want to do is just show you a little bit more detailed picture about what SD-WAN looks like and what some of the layers are, and we'll talk about a customer example here in a minute. Before we kick that off, what I want to do is I just want to open up a poll. Take your time in reading it and actually answering it. Helps us kind of understand where you come from within the WAN and what you're utilizing there. And it's a little bit relevant as far as looking at things from a hybrid angle. All right. So great, you guys are starting to answer in. We'll close the poll out here in a minute or two. All right. Thank you. So when we look at SD-WAN as far as an overall architecture here, well, I had articulated 4 layers before. I'm depicting here 3, and we're going to start from the bottom. We're going to start from the distributed forwarding layer. What this really is, view this as your CPE or your premise device. You know, previously, you know, your existing router or any sort of managed device that you have from a provider. And this is actually what takes care of forwarding your traffic. You know, whether layer 2, layer 3 traffic, moving bits from point A to point B. In an SD-WAN architecture, these are all distributed, and these are the ingress and egress points, if you will, to the tunnels that you're going to utilize and encrypt through your transport, creating a variety of different types of topologies associated between across your WAN, whether it's full mesh, hub and spoke, or partial mesh. And then from there, of course, your endpoints, your data centers, your branches, your remote sites, your campus, and even some of your cloud assets, they of course connect into some level of transport. And with that, I'm going to actually close the poll just so we can kind of see some of the results associated with what you guys are using. Now, the important part of SD-WAN, or the great part of SD-WAN, should I say, not really, and it's also important, is actually the transport. It's what provides you the ability to take different types of transport and utilize them seamlessly and view them almost as if they're a singular infrastructure. So when we look at it, it's really about consuming Metro Ethernet, MPLS services, business internet services, LTE, or in some cases for some of our customers that we talk to, they actually leverage commodity-based internet too as well. And so when we take a look at that, we see some of you guys as far as, some about 21% seem to be deploying hybrid, 18% is deploying MPLS, and 6% are utilizing dual MPLS VPNs and circuits, and a couple using public internet. The beauty about SD-WAN is it gives you the power to be able to use all of them simultaneously and be able to then derive specific application-based policies to determine which path is going to be best for your particular SLAs. And when I go through the customer example, this will make a little bit more sense as far as utilizing hybrid-based transport connectivity. So that's the transport layer. It's really our pipes, right? Utilize a wide variety and hybrid variant to those pipes, connecting to all of our distributed forwarding endpoints that are the basically the tunnel initiators as well as tunnel terminations. And then, of course, the top layer, we look at it from a control layer. Now, the control layer is typical within an SD-WAN architecture. This is a kind of a brains behind it all that manages, the configurations, the control plane policies between all the distributed elements. So it's basically a controller, right? To use a very simple word, but also associated to this top level portion of an SD-WAN architecture are automation elements, things like zero-touch provisioning to facilitate your bring up of a particular site or auto configuration of your particular business needs. And so that's really, and as well as providing your management layer, being able to actually, look at your devices, configure them, take a look at any sort of analysis as far as what the flows are doing and what your traffic is doing. So at a high level, there's three portions to this. There's your controller or your controlled centralized monitoring and operations, to your transport layer, and then of course your distributing forwarding elements. All of these provide connectivity in a variety of different types of topologies that you need between your data centers, your campuses, your branches, remote sites, as well as any sort of cloud assets, whether it's an infrastructure as a service or a software as a service asset. So moving on, just a little bit more detail on some of the things that SD-WAN can give you. There's the operational simplicity that you hear about and we talk about quite a bit, hybrid WAN, application or cloud awareness, as well as having a kind of a secure infrastructure. And as you can see through the boxes there, I've kind of given some characteristics of what each of those really mean. When we look at simplicity, it's about making it so that you really have as little touch on your network infrastructure for the WAN as possible. SD-WAN is intended to make this simple for you. You want to be able to deploy a CPE or being able to automate the deployment of a CPE, whether in a virtual form factor, so that you're actually not really touching it, right? ZTP is what we call it, zero-touch provisioning. And you want to have that view being centralized, right? This is the control layer, the controller that we were talking about. And of course, there's another piece that you want to ensure is interoperability with existing devices or premise devices you have. This could be something so simple as connectivity options physically or integration into tool sets that you might be particularly using, as well as protocol usage. Hybrid WAN is really about empowering you to look at your transport layer and be agnostic to it. You want to be able to support multiple types of transport in order to increase your bandwidth, but also increase your availability and resiliency associated to it. We're getting to a point where, business internet or let's say commercial internet is actually becoming good enough that you can actually drive certain critical services and applications like voice over IP across that. But SD-WAN helps you be able to determine, is it right now a good time for me to use that particular link for this application, or some other link I'm using or transport not good enough, do I need to switch? And that really then drives into the application and cloud awareness. You want to have a level of integrated intelligence directly at the distributing forwarding layer, as close to where your users, the applications are, to actually understand and be able to monitor those apps so you can make intelligent decisions to how you want to reroute or reforward your traffic flow across your multi-transport infrastructure. And with that becomes a level of distributed analytics to really kind of understand what the traffic is doing. And very importantly, of course, depending on the SD-WAN path that you go, there's a level of topology support on a per application basis. Some applications, as an example, like a POS system, derives itself or utilizes a basic hub and spoke kind of an architecture because of its centralization. Others may not require a hub and spoke architecture, but maybe more full mesh, like voice over IP, for example. But the ability to have that awareness and an ability to have multi-topology support based on your application is also a part of this. And of course, the infrastructure level, right? You want to secure your connectivity. You want to be able to support what existing protocols you're used to that are in your branches or in your data center, like OSPF or BGP, and be able to centralize the control of that, but distribute the forwarding associated to those things. So I see a couple of questions coming in. We'll take those here in about a minute or two. So please keep them coming in if you have some questions you want to ask me. But if I'm unable to answer questions, I'll make sure I reach out to you directly and get you something appropriate. So when we look at SD-WAN, let's take in, there's a couple of things you want to take into consideration when you either evaluate your vendor or you evaluate the technology in and of itself. And, in no order of importance, I've put a couple of bullets here for things for you to think about. I'll run through a couple of them. The first one is really topology and segmentation support. You've heard me mention a couple of things about that. What that really is can you, what's the level of support or what's your need to actually have hub and spoke topologies for X application to full mesh topologies for different types of applications, and can that be supported in the SD-WAN appliances or a solution that you might be looking at? That also looks at it, you can look at it also from a security standpoint, which I think is the obvious statement. We have a couple of customers that are involved in M&As, and they need to have levels of segmentation to kind of protect the different organizations until such time that they begin to merge. In other cases, when you look at IoT as a potential application or solution, you obviously have a lot of third-party partners or third-party businesses or what have you that need to have a point of presence inside of your network, and so you want to be able to segment them so you don't allow for them to become an attack vector from a security angle into your own corporate infrastructure. Key management also is another one for you to look at. As you heard me mention before, part of SD-WAN is about creating an encrypted tunnel overlay on top of your transport. And there's some implementations that use pure IPsec, use IP2, et cetera. However, there comes a level of key management that's critical, depending on the scale of your operations and the scale and the number of sites you have being deployed. As some may attest in your current kind of status quo approaches of building networks from your branches into your data centers, key management could potentially be a big pain point. I know I have from some installs that I've done. Yeah, and then the last one I'll really kind of touch on, and we'll move on here, is really about cloud. Is there an ability for you to be able to extend your WAN directly into your infrastructure as a service vendor, right? Or even into your own private cloud that you've built, right? So can I place an SD-WAN distributed forwarding endpoint inside of Amazon, inside of Azure, in order for you to have some sort of seamless transport connectivity into that workload that you've got there? And the other part about SaaS is there's an element of integration, but what it really is about deep awareness of what the SaaS is and where it's going and what it needs. We find a lot of SaaS vendors, I touched on O365 a couple of times here, where they recommend direct internet access, and from a level of integration, it's about, is there some level of intelligence and awareness in the SD-WAN infrastructure to understand what's my best exit point to actually get to my SaaS application? That's something to actually kind of take in consideration as you look at SD-WAN potentially to meet your needs. So this is an actual customer. I've held the name due to their request. And what this is it's a retail-based enterprise business that's both company as well as franchise-owned, and they've got a little over 4,200 sites across the world, basically. And we broke this down into the 4 different components that they actually looked at. And obviously, as you can see, done a comparison of the before and after. So the components are really talking about their circuit, so their transport, right? MPLS, what kind of circuits they use to increase their bandwidth. how fast were they actually able to look at their stores or make changes to their stores across their entire infrastructure. Security, you know, the ability or their need to actually secure, like, you know, applications like POS from other services that they actually got being delivered to each of their in-store properties. And then, of course, management. When you look at it before, you know, they were looking at a poor price of bandwidth. So basically, they could increase their bandwidth, but at very, very high cost. And I think some of you can relate to this. When we look at an implementation for them, it took about 9 to 12 months to plan, and then they can only do 2 stores per day. And when you look at 4,200 sites, that's a lot of stores. If you can only do 2 stores per day, that really takes you a long time to get there. Security, you know, they were using both firewalls and MPLS to kind of isolate some traffic, and then they were kind of utilizing a mix and match of a variety of different tools as a result of corporate standards and some of the franchise side, if you will. So after utilizing, you know, of course, it was a Viptela SD-WAN solution that they purchased and are now deploying. You know, they've been able to claim roughly up to about 70% less cost 70% cost savings, on their circuit. And what this was is they went to a broadband, right, in order to bring higher bandwidth into their stores in order to address some in-store experience stuff, things like guest Wi-Fi, or as well as some kind of in-store digital advertisements. And they were able to get higher bandwidth at a cheaper cost as a result of utilizing broadband and then utilizing SD-WAN to make that kind of seamless transition and intelligent integration between MPLS circuits as well as broadband circuits. They were able to now start rolling out 25 stores a night, right? So clearly this is a great benefit to them because now, you know, 4,200 divided by 25, you know, versus 4,200 divided by 2, it helps them actually roll things out much quicker. There was security built into the SD-WAN solution as a result of segmentation capabilities that we provide, allowing for them to secure their POS, guest Wi-Fi, as well as some other services like video that they provide in store. And then they were able to finally centralize and standardize on their level of management for their visibility purposes and requirements here. We do have some notes available on our website for you to kind of take a look at that actually might give you a little bit more detail as far as this specific customer deployment and example. So really, who benefits from SD-WAN? Truthfully, everyone does, right? It doesn't really matter what industry you are, whether you're in the oil and gas, whether you're in manufacturing, you're a service provider, no matter what size you are, you know, from small to large enterprises like, you know, some huge banks and things. Ultimately, there's a lot of benefits that SD-WAN can provide you, from control, kind of really putting the destiny of the WAN back into your hands, or taking advantage of a cheaper circuit costs as a result of really looking at commodity internet or business-based internet to help drive to augment some of your MPLS VPN costs, if you will, but still be able to deliver positive experiences to critical applications like voice. You know, on that note, what we had, you know, I'll end with a customer story before I look at the questions here. You know, again, this was the hurricane customer where, you know, they were impacted there, but when their MPLS, they had an MPLS outage before the hurricane actually hit, and, you know, they're a distributed enterprise across all of the continental United States, and they had some concerns about running voice over IP over their broadband internet services. And when we were working with them, we told them about a customer of ours that runs all of their IP telephony across for 911, but it was obviously within a single city, and so they were concerned about it being widespread across the states. And so when their VPN actually got impacted, all their services based on the configuration and policies we had flipped over to their broadband, and they were pleasantly surprised and kind of commented that broadband now is good enough to be able to drive their voice services because not a single user was impacted or even noticed that they actually flipped over to a different, you know, arguably perception-wise a less mission-critical capable type of utility. Bottom line, what it means is that, you know, there's some automation that can be derived from SD-WAN, but at this moment, you know, broadband-based internet can be good enough for you in order to help drive some mission-critical types of apps and services. So with that, I'm going to take a look at some of the questions, and then we'll talk about some of the learn more kind of stuff, and then we'll go ahead and end the webinar.
Great, thanks for that, Rob. That was really great. We have several questions coming in. Everybody's been really engaged, and thank you for that and participating. We have, what is the difference between SD-WAN tunnel architecture and the queues and the COS for MPLS?
So I'll try to answer this best I can. You know, I have some technical expertise, but I'm not really deep there. So if my answer doesn't answer your question, let me know, and then reach out to me through my contact I've put here, and we can kind of discuss some more stuff in detail. At a high level, from a tunnel perspective, this is really about creating, let's say, like an IPsec tunnel end-to-end between in Vitella's world, we call them V-edges, V-edge routers, which are the prem device that would be deployed. A IPsec tunnel is created between these two endpoints. Within this tunnel, we segment, kind of a nice comparison here would be, it's almost like creating a VRF, right, and putting a VRF per application and punch that through the tunnel. From an MPLS COS, this is obviously about class of service and the level of priority I want to put on the specific types of application. Now, simultaneously, prioritization can be done also through the segments and through the tunnel, but what we're talking about from tunnel and segmentation is basically creating a separate topology or a separate network within the tunnel in and of itself for a specific service that you actually classify. I hope that actually answered your particular question there. Another question that came in was, you know, from a transport perspective, assuming that wave private lines cannot be mixed to an SD-WAN because it's not IP-based. If I could ask clarity, maybe I'm not understanding on the private line piece of it, but it really is going to depend on your vendor. As an example for Viptela, okay, we support a wide variety of, we do support, say, like T1 access for low-speed interfaces, and we've deployed those. But we also have some native LTE support allowing you to put a SIM inside of it. So my best guidance to your question there is really it's going to depend on the vendor, and you know, look at the vendor and what kind of transport options they actually provide you as it relates to their SD-WAN solution.
Great, and then a bit more information is being asked about distributed analytics, if you can tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so distributed analytics is, you know, as you saw me mention before, the part of the SD-WAN architecture, and as you may not have kind of guessed already, part of that is, you know, kind of hinting at what Viptela actually offers here, is at the endpoints themselves, those are distributed forwarding elements. And inside of those forwarding elements, or V-edges, as you heard me call them, there's analytics being captured, right? Flow statistics, measuring of latency, jitter, as well as delay in order to help attribute and achieve a variety of different SLAs based off the policies that you define from the centralized controller. So all that information is distributed to each endpoint, and then obviously the information is flowed up and centralized into a product we call vManage, which is your control endpoint, so you can kind of see what's going from a flow perspective. And that's kind of what I mean from analytics angle there. If you want to know more, by all means, reach out to me, and we can chat a little bit more with some of our product team.
Great, and that puts us right at the 30-minute mark. So again, reach out to us multiple ways. Certainly through our website is info@viptela.com. So that's a quick and easy way to continue submitting questions. And we look forward to seeing you next time. We are hosting webinars every other Thursday, the first and the third Thursday of the month. And that'll wrap it up for us.
Yeah, and just to kind of close out there too, thank you. You know, thank you guys for your time. Reach out to me directly. As you see, you can either reach me on Twitter or my email, or even reach us on Twitter. But I've put some pretty good resources for you guys to learn more either about Viptela or just what customers in the industry are doing. One piece of collateral I'd like for you guys to maybe take a look at if you're looking at deploying Office 365 or actually have, we've got a nice little piece from an analyst that kind of addresses that and gives you some guidance. To the last question from one of our attendees here, yes, we will be posting today's deck. We've actually recorded this presentation so you can listen to this on demand, and we'll give you a copy of this in PDF format so you can actually utilize it further. And with that, I appreciate you guys' time, and I hope all of you have a great day no matter where you're at in the world. Thank you.